Every night, my wife and son sneaked into my room while I slept. Quiet steps, soft whispers, a secret I was never meant to hear. So I set up a hidden camera, and when I finally watched the footage, the truth hit harder than any nightmare, and the pride on their faces turned into silence. Before we move on, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you are right now. I'd love to see how far this voice travels. My name is Lucien Alden. At 62, I thought I had everything: a lifetime career as an architect behind me, a quiet suburban home in Connecticut, and a family I'd spent decades building with care. My wife, Clara, and our only son, Nathan, 35. I always believed that my calm nature and my orderly habits were the foundation of our family. But I was wrong. To them, my calmness was boring. My caution with money, outdated. They said it playfully, but there was always a bitter truth behind the jokes. Dad's old, slow. I used to laugh it off. I never realized that, in the eyes of those I loved most, I had quietly turned into an obstacle, a relic to be managed, not respected. The tragedy didn't start with a bang. It began with whispers behind closed doors, with glances exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. And it all started with the smallest things, right inside my own bedroom, the place I once believed was my last sanctuary. At first, it was subtle. Clara began locking her phone more often. Nathan's visits grew shorter and his questions sharper, about accounts, property titles, passwords. I remember one Sunday morning, sunlight spilling through the blinds, the smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. Clara was humming softly as she scrolled through her phone. I said, half joking, "Still texting your secret admirer?" She didn't look up. "Maybe I am," she said, her tone light but her eyes distant. It was the first time I felt the crack. Small, invisible, but deep enough to let something cold seep in. From that day, I started noticing more. The late-night calls that ended when I walked in, the envelopes that disappeared from my drawer, the lawyer's name printed on a piece of paper she quickly hid under a magazine. I wanted to believe it was nothing. I wanted to trust them, because that's what families do, right? But trust is a fragile thing. Once it's cracked, everything you thought was real begins to blur. I was standing in the heart of my own family drama, yet too blind, or too proud, to see the truth unraveling in front of me. That's how betrayal begins, not with lies shouted in anger, but with the quiet decision to stop being honest. Everything began so harmlessly. The book I'd been reading, left open on my nightstand, was suddenly resting neatly on the shelf. My car keys, which I always hung on the right hook, somehow ended up on the left the next morning. At first, I blamed myself. "Lucien, you're getting old," I murmured, half laughing at my own forgetfulness. I even started jotting down reminders, little notes about pills, appointments, groceries, as if I could hold memory still with a pen. Clara and Nathan seemed so concerned. They called often, sent messages at lunchtime, their words soaked in kindness that somehow felt rehearsed. "Dad, are you sure you're doing okay?" Nathan asked once, his voice dripping with that soft, practiced worry. Clara sighed, brushing invisible dust off the counter. "You need more rest, Lucien." That line hung in the air, not a suggestion, but an agenda. Then came another sign. I own a small collection of antique watches, each one ticking like a heartbeat from the past. My father's old Patek Philippe sat safely in a locked glass case, the kind you open only for memories. One morning, I noticed its hour hand had shifted, exactly 3 hours ahead. No one else had the key. I fixed it, said nothing, but inside me a cold thread of suspicion began to unwind. From then on, I started watching. I pretended to be more forgetful, left drawers open, moved things around, took notes in silence. Every misplaced item, every flicker out of place I recorded. And slowly, a pattern emerged. The confusion only appeared on nights when Clara and Nathan were home. Sometimes, I felt someone had touched my world while I slept, lightly, but enough to make me shiver. One night, I woke to a faint clatter from the bathroom. I kept my eyes shut, breathing steady. Footsteps, slow, cautious. The next morning, my blood pressure pills looked different. The color was off, the scent too faint. I held one in my palm, staring at it like it might confess something. No, I wasn't losing my mind. Someone was moving through my life like a shadow, rearranging the truth piece by piece. The violation wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, deliberate. It crawled under the skin, settled there, and whispered that nothing was safe anymore. I told myself to stay calm. Calmness, I realized, wasn't weakness. It was strategy. So I adapted. I let them believe I was slipping. I left clues, notes, little bait trails that looked like confusion. Appointment, Benson, one said, left purposefully on my desk. Nathan's eyes flicked toward it. Clara pretended not to notice. They had routines, tells, small patterns of deceit they didn't even know they were showing. They thought they were careful. They weren't. One evening, I found Nathan in the kitchen, the laptop glow painting his face in pale blue. He looked up, startled. "Dad, don't worry, Mom just wants what's best for you." I met his gaze, steady. "For me," I said quietly, "or for the investment fund?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I remember everything. The warm coffee scent, the dim light, the ticking clock on the wall. Mundane details, yes, but they became anchors. Proof of who was home, who had touched what, who had crossed invisible lines. I learned to listen, to the hinge of a door, the drip of a faucet, the click of a lock. Every sound told me something. And through that silence, a different kind of strength grew in me. Not the kind that breaks things, but the kind that endures. The kind that waits. I learned to set traps with calmness, to weaponize normalcy. By day, I smiled, made breakfast, asked about their work. By night, I documented every movement, every shift, every missing breath of honesty. I became both the prey and the witness, patient, deliberate. Sometimes I'd catch Clara watching me, her eyes softer than I remembered. Maybe regret, maybe fear. I wanted to believe in remorse, but I also knew how convincing guilt could look when it's worn as a mask. Their arrogance was their weakness. They thought I was blind. They never saw me seeing them. Each quiet hour sharpened my resolve. Each moved object was a message. I was no longer just the old man losing his mind. I was the man who knew. And when the time came, I'd have every note, every sign, every truth written down. In a world where smiles can lie, silence can become the most dangerous weapon of all. Before we go any further, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and tell me what time it is where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. My restraint was my shield. I had learned to hide behind calmness, a kind of survival tactic. When Clara said, "You forgot your dentist appointment again?" I only nodded, my eyes drifting off as if my memory had truly fractured. Deep down, I knew I had never made any appointment. I stayed silent. And that silence made them bolder. One night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., I woke up to a sound as thin as a hair, the faint creak of a hinge, soft enough for only the sleepless to hear. The door to my room opened a crack. A dim light from the hallway spilled in, brushing across a pair of bare feet. A shadow moved toward the medicine cabinet. The soft clink of glass, then silence. I held my breath. My heart pounded so hard I feared it would give me away. A strange smell floated through the air. A hint of alcohol, mixed with something metallic and cold. When I opened my eyes, the door was closed again. I lay still, but a truth was forming inside me. They weren't just testing my memory anymore. They were building an entirely different reality. From that day on, everything changed. My blood pressure pills, a different color, a different smell. I'd taken them for 5 years. I knew every tiny crack on their surface. But now, they were smooth and wrong. My financial papers in the drawer, shuffled as if someone had been halfway through searching for something. One afternoon, Nathan walked into the kitchen, all smiles and excitement. Dad, I helped reorganize your investments, met a new financial advisor. He says your portfolio's way too conservative. I looked up slowly and set my coffee cup down. And when exactly did I give you permission to do that? He forced a nervous laugh. Come on, Dad, I'm just trying to help. Your money could be working harder for you. My blood turned to ice. Frustration thickened into anger, and anger hardened into something heavier, a cold, suffocating ache. They didn't just want money. They wanted power. They wanted to turn me, the man who built this family, into something manageable. A harmless old man who'd smile, nod, and sign wherever they pointed. I understood then. Every act of care, every gentle word, it was a performance. A carefully written play where I was cast as the victim, and their final act would make everything official. The assets, the decisions, even my voice. That night, I opened my drawer and pulled out the old leather notebook I'd kept hidden, its corners worn soft from years of use. I began writing again, every event, every detail, the day, the hour, the light, the scent, the sound, even the feeling in my chest when I heard them lie. I wrote in small, steady letters, as if each stroke carved a mark into memory. Nathan, March 12th, conversation with financial advisor, check account. Each line was a puzzle piece in the quiet map of betrayal I was assembling, silently, patiently. When Clara brought me tea that evening, her voice was as soft as ever. You should rest. You've been so tired lately. I smiled. Yes, I know, but I only get tired when I have to pretend. She froze, just for a heartbeat, then quickly masked it. But I saw it. That flicker, that tiny shiver of someone who's just been seen through. From that night on, I was no longer the prey. I was the observer. I began weaving my net with silence, each gesture, each glance, each meaningless question carefully placed. They didn't know I was recording, photographing, backing up every file. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was only waiting for the right moment. Silence was no longer defense. It had become my weapon. They were walking straight into their own trap, unaware that in this game, even the old know how to make others pay. When the hallway lights dimmed, I looked toward the window. My reflection stared back, calm, sharp, dangerous. In that stillness, I knew sweet revenge was drawing near. Tuesday afternoon. Clara and Nathan called me down to the living room. On the table sat a thick stack of papers, neatly bound, the corners still sharp. The afternoon light slipped through the blinds, stretching into long stripes across the wooden surface. I set down my glass of wine. My hand didn't shake, or at least I told myself it didn't. Lucien, Clara began. Her voice was sweet, but it carried that cold precision, like a blade stirring in a cup of tea. Nathan and I spoke with your old psychiatrist. He said you're showing signs of memory decline. We think it's time Nathan has legal power of attorney to help you manage your assets. I froze. Her words drifted across the room like the rustle of silk. Nathan added quietly with practiced sincerity, It's only to protect you, Dad. I looked at the papers. On the first page, there's a printed authorization form, a fake signature, already traced, waiting only for the final stroke. The title was bold, black, definitive, power of attorney. I wanted to laugh, but the sound would have echoed like wind in an empty house. You called the doctor last month, Clara continued, reciting her lines as if from a script. You don't remember much, Lucien. We just want to keep you safe. Safe? I asked, calm as glass. Safe for me, or safe for my money? Nathan didn't answer. Clara blinked fast, searching for a retreat. Lucien, we're doing this because we love you, she said, her tone softening, almost tender. Something inside me turned to ice. I realized I was standing at the edge of two roads, one where I bowed my head, signed the paper, and let my life shrink into a paragraph, or the other where I stood up, raw, furious, defiant. I thought of the house I built, every brick, every bill, the grocery receipts still tucked in drawers. I thought of Nathan's laughter when he was little, of Clara humming in the kitchen while washing dishes. Those memories. now laid out on the table like assets to be divided. That night, I sat alone in the dark. The wedding photo rested on the cabinet, streetlights outside threw soft light across the frame, illuminating two people who once smiled at forever. I touched the glass, a meaningless gesture, just to prove they had once been real. The pain didn't roar, it was cold, heavy, a stone rolling in my chest, grinding with every breath. I asked myself, would I let them trample everything I built, or would I fight back? In my mind, memories began to arrange themselves into a plan, small, deliberate, dangerous. They thought a few doctor's words and a stack of papers could erase my voice. They forgot something vital. To erase a man, you need more than signatures. You need truth, and I still had that. I took a pen from the drawer, switched on the desk lamp, and began to write. Every event, every word, every detail. The smell of whiskey on Nathan's shirt, the message I found on his phone, the family watch. Its hands moved 5 minutes too slow. Each line wasn't just a note. It was a declaration. I still remember. I still know. I am not the fool you think I am. Then came another thought. If they had a doctor's opinion, there must be medical records, emails, appointments. I would demand them, all of them. I'd make them expose themselves, piece by piece. They might try to weaponize legality, but there's another kind of legality they hadn't counted on, the kind rooted in betrayal that demands justice. As the night deepened, the clock on the wall ticked steadily, a sound like a hammer striking metal. I knew I needed strategy, not rage. Rage burns too fast. Strategy lasts. I outlined my moves. Install a small legal camera in my room. Back up every document to the cloud. Call Harold Benson, the one lawyer I still trusted. Ask him about rights, about what happens when family manipulates law to steal control. That call would be my shield. Before sleep, I looked at the photo again. I built this house with my own hands, I murmured. If they want to take it, they'll have to take proof, not my silence. And in that darkness, the cold resolve became something solid. I didn't crave revenge. I craved justice. I would fight, not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever been betrayed by the people they love the most. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. Arrogance is always the fatal flaw of those who think they're clever. A few days after our failed negotiation, Nathan walked into my room looking confident, too confident. The afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, scattering gold dust across the old oak floor. We sat by the coffee table when he casually let it slip. Good thing I canceled your meeting with Harold Benson. The man's ancient. I know someone way more capable. I froze. I had never told anyone about that meeting, not even written it in my phone calendar. Just 3 words in my leather notebook. Meeting H. Benson, locked away in my drawer. At that moment, I knew. They'd gone through my things. This wasn't suspicion anymore, it was confirmation. A chill crawled up my spine, then settled into a cold, sharp clarity. I didn't need the police. I didn't need a detective. I'd designed hundreds of buildings, each detail measured down to the millimeter. I could design a plan, a perfect one, to expose them. That night, the house was quiet. Only the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of the TV filled the air. I sat in front of my laptop, the pale glow washing over my face. I ordered a set of micro-security cameras, legal for private home surveillance. I read every line of the disclaimer. Property owners are permitted to record within their private domain for the purpose of personal safety. I smiled. Perfectly legal. The game had begun. I thought like an engineer again. Every beam, every line, every weak point carefully calculated. 3 cameras, one hidden inside the alarm clock, one tucked in the air vent above my desk, and one disguised inside a fake potted plant near the bathroom, each one invisible. While waiting for the package to arrive, I kept up my act, the forgetful old man. I misplaced my glasses, left doors unlocked, let them believe what they wanted. The more they trusted my decline, the bolder they became. 2 nights after the cameras were in place, I reviewed the footage. Gray images flickered on the screen, but clear enough. At 2:03 a.m., Nathan slipped into my room, opened my drawer, and took photos of my notes. Moments later, Clara entered the bathroom. She emptied my blood pressure pills and replaced them with identical capsules. Same color, same shape, but not the same effect. I slowed down the playback, turned on the audio. Their whispers came through, soft, cruel, unforgettable. "Just a few more accidents," Clara murmured. "Then he'll have no choice but to sign." "Marcus said the dosage will just make him dizzy. Nothing serious," Nathan replied. And then, laughter. Quiet, satisfied laughter. They weren't just after my money. They were playing with my health, my life, to make their betrayal look legitimate. They thought age made me weak. They forgot that age also teaches patience and precision. The anger burned cold, not hot. I printed every frame, copied every file, sent the pills to a private lab for testing. Each step was methodical, like constructing the final pillar of a collapsing bridge. A week later, I invited them to dinner, steak, Nathan's favorite. The table was set, the candles flickered, a calm before the storm. After dessert, I said quietly, "I have a little home video to show you both." I plugged my laptop into the big screen, their faces drained of color as the footage rolled. When the scene showed Clara switching the pills, she stammered, "Lucian, this is fake. You can't—" I interrupted softly, placing a small bag on the table. "These are the pills you replaced. The lab results say they're not medication, just mild sedatives." I pressed play again. This time, the footage showed Nathan swapping the heart pills. Silence filled the room. I looked him straight in the eyes. "You didn't just want me confused. You wanted me incapacitated, not dead, just weak enough for you to take control." Clara began to cry. Nathan said nothing. His confidence melted away, replaced by fear. Then I threw another folder on the table, printouts of emails between Nathan and Marcus Vale, his so-called financial advisor. Wire transfers, profit splits, the whole plan spelled out in black and white. Nathan slumped in his chair. There was nothing left to say. When the police came that night, everything moved like a scene out of a movie. But it wasn't cinematic. It was real. It was painful. Sweet revenge isn't about triumph. It's about justice. Cold, necessary, and final. I had won, but at the cost of a family that no longer existed. I installed 3 cameras, one after another, like laying the final stones of a hidden fortress. One disguised inside a clock aimed directly at the door. Another buried in the air vent, overlooking the desk where I kept my files. And the last one tucked inside a fake plant near the bathroom, where the dim light would easily deceive wandering eyes. I tested each carefully, recorded a few minutes, checked the sound. Everything worked perfectly. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and waited. 2 nights later, at 2 a.m., it happened. I woke from a half-dream, skin prickling with that strange, instinctive unease. The air was still. Only the faint ticking of the clock filled the room. I didn't move, just listened. Then, a soft rustle and a flicker of light from the infrared lens. Morning came. I opened my laptop, hands steady but heart pounding beneath my ribs. I replayed the footage. And there they were. Clara and Nathan, pale and ghost-like under the infrared glow. Nathan bent over, opening my desk drawer. He pulled out my financial papers, taking photos one by one, meticulous, deliberate. Meanwhile, Clara drifted toward the bathroom. She opened the medicine cabinet, poured out the real blood pressure pills, and replaced them with identical fakes. She even smiled, a small, content smile, as if what she was doing was harmless. I clenched my fists. Every passing second cut like glass. Their faces, calm, confident, almost proud. Then came the whispers. The microphones caught every word. "Hurry up. Just a few more incidents, and he'll have to sign the papers. Marcus Vale said if we make him a little unstable, the doctor will handle the rest. These fake pills only make him dizzy in the mornings. It's fine." And then, laughter. Soft, controlled. Cold. The kind of sound that chills you precisely because it feels so casual. I sat there, staring at the screen, at the people who once shared dinner with me, who used to say, "We're family." But what I saw wasn't family. It was a performance, precise, rehearsed, cruel. This wasn't betrayal anymore. It was a plan. Structured, funded, hidden. A perfect deceit. I remembered Clara's eyes, the concern that now looked artificial, every tender word suddenly exposed as a calculated script. The warmth had never been real. It was all a play. A family drama where love was a tool and trust a weapon. I felt nothing for a long moment. No anger, no outrage. Just a deep, hollow silence swallowing everything inside me. The blue glow of the screen reflected off my face, cold, lifeless. And from within that silence, something shifted. Not pain, but clarity. I watched the footage again. Every detail, every sound, every flicker of their eyes. All recorded, all preserved. They thought I was weak. They thought I was old, slow, harmless. But they forgot one thing. The man who built this empire is the same man who knows how to burn it down. I closed the laptop. The room was still. The ticking clock now felt like a countdown. I took a deep breath, exhaled slowly. The anger was gone. What remained was sharper, quieter, colder. And in that stillness, I knew exactly what I had to do. If this story resonates with you, consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate it. A week later, I invited them both for dinner. Pan-seared steak with red wine, Nathan's favorite. The table was modest, but every detail was deliberate. Small candles, silverware gleaming under warm light, white porcelain plates, glasses still holding traces of wine. Soft music drifted from an old speaker. The glow from the ceiling lamp wrapped the room in a fragile warmth. Clara forced a smile. Nathan spoke in half sentences, his movements stiff, like an actor lost in his own play. After dinner, I poured another round of wine and said casually, "I've got a little home movie to show you both. A nice family memory." I connected the laptop to the big TV. A flash of blue light filled the living room. The screen came alive. The first clip rolled. Ordinary family moments. Nathan as a boy, Clara laughing, me grease-stained and smiling after fixing something in the garage. They watched, then froze. Recognition flickered in their eyes. The room, the lighting, themselves. Then came the scene. Clara in the bathroom, swapping the pills. Her voice trembled. "Lucien, this is fake." I opened the drawer and placed a transparent zip bag on the table. The candlelight glinted on the plastic like a warning. "These are the pills you gave me," I said quietly. "I had them tested. The result? Placebos, filled with mild sedatives." The air tightened. Nathan began to sweat. His eyes darted from the screen to me, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "But you did worse," I said, my voice now steady, metallic. I held up a small bottle. "This is my heart medication, the one my doctor said I must never skip, not even for a day." I hit play. On the screen, Nathan appeared again, crouched by my nightstand, replacing the real bottle with one almost identical, but with a much lower dosage. The audio carried the faint rustle of his breathing. Even in silence, guilt made its own sound. "You didn't just want me confused," I said slowly. "You wanted me weak, to collapse just enough, not to die, but to surrender, so you could take control." Clara burst into tears. Nathan sat there, pale, frozen, empty. I threw a file onto the table. Copies of emails between Nathan and a man named Marcus Vale, posing as a financial advisor. Lines of text, timestamps, wire transfer notes, each word a verdict. "Marcus Vale," I said, "a fraud under federal investigation for multiple financial scams. Your plan was simple. Once you had the power of attorney, all my assets would be transferred into his so-called high-risk investment fund. Then you'd both split the dirty commission. Nathan sank into the chair, his eyes vacant. Clara sobbed harder. The only sound left was the ticking of the clock, honest and cruel in its rhythm. Truth didn't explode that night. It fell, heavy and silent, like a verdict no one dared read aloud. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I spoke again, not in anger, but with the calm of a man who had already buried his illusions. "And who was behind all this?" I asked softly. "The new advisor you introduced me to, Nathan?" No answer, just silence thick enough to swallow the air. Minutes passed, then came the doorbell. 2 officers entered, firm steps, clipped voices, papers in hand. They read the warrant, their tone neutral, detached. Nathan didn't move. Clara clutched at her collar as if holding on to something that was already gone. As they were led away, I stood still, feeling a strange hollowness twisting into quiet relief. I had everything prepared, the footage, the test results, the emails, the backups. No room left for denial. The house felt like a theater stripped of its actors. The only props left, a table, 2 empty plates, a family portrait now cracked in spirit. Justice didn't roar. It whispered. And its whisper was final. I sat down, pressing my hand to my forehead. For the first time, the thought came. Justice had come at a cost. A family's cost. "I never wanted revenge," I murmured. And I never needed sweet revenge. I only wanted the truth. After the officers left, I called Harold. His voice was low, steady, always the same. "You did the right thing," he said. "Keep everything. I'll handle the legal side. We'll file the civil claim and assist the criminal investigation." Hearing him was like feeling a thin armor form around me, not protection from pain, but from chaos. Outside, neighbors gathered, whispering under the glow of the street lamp. One elderly woman waved, her eyes said, "Life is complicated, isn't it?" I gave her a faint smile and closed the door. The room behind me was still warm from dinner, but it felt like winter. I walked to the window. The police car's taillights blinked red across the glass. A child ran past on the sidewalk, dragging a toy car that clattered softly, blissfully unaware of how adults destroy their own worlds. That contrast cut deep. I thought of the days ahead, court hearings, paperwork, the silence after everything is said. Justice might restore my dignity, but it could never bring back the afternoons I'd lost, or the apologies that never came. Before bed, I opened my old leather notebook. Every note I'd written was a memory I refused to lose. At the bottom of the last page, I added one more line. "If I must lose, let it be for the truth." I closed the book, slid it under my pillow, and for the first time in weeks, sleep came, soft and unbroken. Tomorrow, I'll call the insurance office, freeze the remaining accounts, and meet Harold to file the paperwork. Slowly, step by step, I'll rebuild my ground, not with fury, but with patience. As I turned off the light, the faint glow from the hallway brushed against the wall. And I thought, the truth doesn't need to scream to be heard. It just needs courage and evidence, spoken in silence. Cold light spilled from the ceiling, washing over the dining table. The clock ticked softly in the silence. I stood in the middle of the room, hands at my sides, staring at the 2 people I once called family. "I gave you both a chance," I said, my voice stripped of anger. Only exhaustion and quiet disappointment remained. "But you chose this path." The words had barely left my lips when the doorbell rang. A small sound, yet it sliced through the air like a blade. I opened the door. 2 police officers stepped in, uniforms crisp, expressions unreadable. Behind them was Harold Benson, my attorney, the man they thought I'd forgotten. "Good evening, officers," I said, my tone calm but firm. "I believe you've received enough evidence to open an investigation into elder abuse and intentional harm." I placed a thick folder on the table. The papers rustled under the light. Inside were everything they needed. Legal footage from my security cameras, toxicology results from a private lab, a string of emails between Nathan and Marcus Vale, and finally, the trust transfer document they had prepared for me to sign. Harold confirmed that every piece of evidence had been collected lawfully within the boundaries of my property. His voice was steady, almost clinical, like a man who'd been waiting for this moment too long. Clara collapsed into a chair, her shoulders trembling, tears splashing onto the cold tile. Nathan reached for her hand, but the officer brushed him aside, a swift, deliberate motion that left no room for pretense. I watched them both, feeling no satisfaction, no rage, only a hollow quiet, the kind that settles after a storm. As I looked at them, it hit me. I was witnessing the ashes of a family drama burned beyond recognition. "We'll need your statement, Mr. Lucian," one officer said. "Of course," I replied, nodding slowly. "But make sure they're treated fairly. I don't want revenge. I just want the truth to stand." Harold placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said softly. His eyes, calm, weathered, belonged to someone who'd seen too much betrayal, yet still believed in justice. The door closed behind them. Silence swallowed the house. Only the faint scent of wine lingered in the air, and the clock kept on ticking. I sat down in the chair where Clara, used to sit. Where laughter once lived, only a faint ring of wine and an unfolded napkin remained. The light glimmered across the table, thin and fragile, the kind of light that reveals truth, but never warmth. I lifted my gaze and exhaled slowly. It was over. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with silence, the kind that belongs to the last one standing, inside a home that no longer feels like one. Outside, the night wind drifted through the trees, carrying the scent of dry grass and winter's first chill. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled. Because sometimes, freedom begins the moment you stop holding on and dare to face what's already gone. Cold white light flooded the courtroom. Camera flashes burst like tiny storms, weaving through the murmurs of reporters and the sharp crack of the judge's gavel. The clerk read the case title, each word echoing across the silent chamber. Elder Abuse, Lucian Hartley versus Clara and Nathan Hartley. The air felt heavy, thick as rain before it falls. I sat on the witness bench, fingers intertwined, heart steady but hollow. Never in my life did I imagine I'd be here, watching my own family stand on the other side of justice. Marcus Vale had been arrested in Nevada while attempting to withdraw money from a shady investment fund. They said when the police stormed in, he was still in his black suit, red tie gleaming, smiling at the bank clerk. Now, in court, his voice was small, his head bowed. "Nathan reached out to me," he said softly, "told me his father was old, frail, needed someone to manage the estate. I just helped him legalize the papers. A cheap excuse for such a deliberate crime." The gallery buzzed. The camera light swept across Nathan's pale face, sweat gathering at his temples. Beside him, Clara trembled, the gold wedding band on her finger catching a thin ray of light. Nathan was charged with 2 counts, financial fraud and premeditated poisoning. Clara was accused of complicity, tampering with my medication, changing the dosage in ways that could have slowly killed me. They avoided my eyes. And I didn't try to find theirs. When I took the stand, my words were calm, measured. "I never wanted to destroy them," I said. "I only wanted them to stop, before it was too late. But sometimes, justice delayed is still justice served." The room fell silent. I could hear the faint scratch of the clerk's pen, the whisper of wind sneaking through the doorframe, and beneath it all, the slow, steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. The verdict was read aloud. Marcus Vale, betrayal. Shortlisted until 15 years in federal prison. Stater all starts. Nathan Hartley, 8 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Clara Hartley, 3 years suspended sentence with mandatory psychological treatment. No one cried. No one begged. Only the echo of footsteps and the metallic clink of handcuffs filled the air, hollow, final, like the pulse of a heart that has given up. I didn't watch them leave. My eyes turned to the window at the far end of the courtroom, where the gray sky hung low and heavy, like my own spirit. The house that once stood for love and trust had been sold to pay for legal fees. Everything warm, everything familiar, had turned into the cold memory of a sweet revenge. As I stepped outside, the autumn wind slipped beneath my coat, carrying the scent of metal and distant rain. It felt as though I had closed a long chapter, not with triumph, not with bitterness, just with quiet necessity. For the first time in years, I was free. But for the first time, I also understood what true loneliness meant. I left Connecticut one early morning when fog still hugged the trees along the road. No one came to see me off. No tears, no goodbyes. Only the sound of wheels rolling down an endless highway, pulling me gently away from the past I thought I'd never escape. California greeted me with the scent of salt, the warmth of early autumn sunlight, and the cries of seagulls circling above the rooftops. I rented a small apartment near the beach in Santa Monica. White walls, wooden floors, a balcony facing the open sea. Each morning, I'd open the door and listen to the waves break against the rocks, a steady rhythm reminding me that I was still alive. I began to paint again. At first, the strokes were trembling, hesitant, uncertain. But little by little, my hands remembered how to move, the same way my heart remembered how to beat after being broken. Those paintings weren't for sale. They weren't meant to be displayed. They were my way of talking to myself, about faith, about pain, and the fragile art of forgiveness. One late afternoon, as the sun melted into the edge of the sea, my phone buzzed. Edward, an old friend from the Architecture Association. Lucien, it's been a long time. We're heading to Italy, Florence, Rome, the Renaissance masterpieces. Would you like to come along? I stared at the screen for a long moment. A part of me wanted to say no. I'd grown used to the silence, to the white walls and the sound of the tide outside my window. But then I smiled. I'll go, I texted back. Maybe it's time to see the beauty of the world again, instead of just staring at its cracks. I set the phone down and poured myself a glass of red wine. The sunset poured its gold across the glass, warming the silver in my hair. A soft, forgiving light that felt like closure. I sat on the balcony, listening to the sea breathing against the rocks, thinking about everything that had passed, how my life had become a quiet family drama, filled with love, betrayal, and redemption. I remembered the moment I lost everything, the home, the trust, the people I thought I knew. Everything was swallowed by a storm of deceit. But in the end, what remained wasn't anger. It was peace, the kind that only comes when you stop asking why and start accepting it is what it is. I lifted my glass, my gaze soft, voice low. Family is where love begins. But when that love turns into a weapon, is forgiveness still a choice? Or does peace only come when sweet revenge finally ends? Silence. The sea kept singing its eternal song. Waves broke and vanished into foam, like time erasing the scars it once left behind. Another chapter closed. No applause. No audience. Just an old man who once lost everything, but finally found himself again. And perhaps that's the only victory that truly matters in this life. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it so others can watch too. Thank you for watching. May you and your loved ones stay safe, peaceful, and happy. And when you're ready for another journey, stay with us for the next story.